I used to live in a street called 93rd Street, and there was a girl there that I was stuck on. She was almost 15 years old, and I used to go out every morning and buy bread for my mother. And I used to get the stale bread because it was 4 cents, and the regular bread was 5 cents. So in no time at all, about 4 months, I had saved 70 cents. And I was stuck on Annie Berger. She had a great pair of legs, and I used to watch her walk upstairs. She lived on the floor above us. So one day, after I had the 70 cents, I said, why don't I take you to the theater? I had it all figured out. 10-cent car fare for 2, 10 cents for car fare coming back, and 50 cents for 2 seats in the third gallery. Now, when we got to the theater, there was Hammerstein's Victoria Theater. There was a fellow selling sauerkraut candy in front of the theater, and it was a nickel bag. And she said, gee, I'd love to have some of that sauerkraut candy. Well, I only had 10 cents left by this time. So I bought her a bag of this candy. Now we're sitting in the gallery so high, you couldn't even see the actors. And she starts eating the sauerkraut candy. And I can hear her, and I can't hear the actors on the stage. And I could have killed her. I thought she'd offer me a piece. But she didn't. So when the show was over, by this time she consumed all the candy. And we got outside, and I said, Annie, it was cold. It was real cold. It had been snowing all that day. I said, look, you had sauerkraut candy, didn't you, in the theater? You never offered me a piece of the candy, did you? Now, I only have 5 cents left, and we got to go all the way to 93rd Street. Now, look, I care a great deal about you, but I don't want to walk to 93rd Street. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll toss a coin up, this nickel that I had left, and you holler heads or tails. She hollered heads, it came down tails, and she walked home. I didn't see her again for 10 years. Soon we were in Vaudeville, and I was a German comedian with a spade beard. I was dressed like my uncle Al Sheen, with Gallagher and Sheen in those days. That was my mother's brother. I don't know if you remember him, but he used to sing, oh, Mr. Gallagher, oh, Mr. Gallagher, what's on your mind this morning, Mr. C? So I became a German comedian. And we were playing in Shays, Toronto, when the Lusitania was sunk in the First World War. I was supposed to sing a song, a German song. I was afraid if I did, they were going to kill me, that audience. I'm going to sing the song for you now. I once knew a woman who couldn't spell cat. Her face was as homely as cinch. That wasn't necessary, that part. Let's keep it on a high basis.
Oh. Can I try again? Can I get another crack at it?
Okay.
Thank you.
I once knew a woman who couldn't spell cat. Her face was as homely as cinch. In winter, she always wore last summer's hat, and the size 11 shoe was a pinch. When she played piano, strong men would faint, and weak men would cry out in grief. And as for her singing, well, it made you feel that it wasn't so tough to be deaf. But with all these things that the people would say, her voice and her looks couldn't drive them away. 'Cause, oh, that woman could cook. Her bread was like angel fool's cake. She could take soup meat and give it one look, and right away it was porterhouse steak. Her pfannekuchen, what a beautiful dream. Her tribe was like peaches and cream, and with the table between us, she looked exactly like Venus. Oh, God, how that woman could cook. Well, obviously, with the Lusitania laying at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, I'd have got killed if I sang that song in Canada. So I put some makeup on him, and I made myself a Jew comedian, which I'd never been. I'd never been a Jew comedian. And I sang this song. Mr. and Mrs. Klein, they lived a life so fine until the relatives came. Uncle and Tante Wolf brought all the little wolves. Like wolves, they lived up to their name. 1 week went by, Klein started to cry. It looks like the wolves mean to stay. So he told his wife one night that while they were sleeping tight, let's leave him and he'll run away. Say, it's better to run to Toronto than to live in a place you don't want to. With 20 wolves in front of me, my house looks like a menagerie. Imagine the cheek from the tante to bring all the wolves from Toronto, and oh, how they can eat at least a pound of meat. Say, they take what they want, to. Just think what the bills will amount to. Every day they're growing more and more. They eat 1 meal a day, that's right. They start in the morning and finish at night. It's going to be a cold, cold winter, and I can't keep the wolves from the door. When I was over in London some years ago, I did a quiz show over there for a while. It wasn't too successful, but the American ambassador, he liked me because I used to be funny and crack jokes. And Jackie Onassis' sister, Razawell, you may have seen her. She's been on TV a few times. She's a very pretty girl. And she had a husband who was Polish. He was well over 4 feet. And I told him a story. This is the story. It's about a hooker. You all know what that is, I guess. I'm sure sometime in your life somebody has seen one. It was a story about a girl who picks up a Pole and takes him home and feeds him, gives him dinner. They go to bed that night, have a great time. Next morning, she helps him get dressed, puts on his uniform with his big epaulets hanging on, and he starts to leave. And she says, just a moment, what about money? And he says, a Polish officer doesn't accept money. If you remember the Second World War, because there's so many now, it's hard to keep track of them. Well, during the Second World War, Hess had been sent by Hitler to try to negotiate peace with Churchill. Churchill at that time was in the projection room at 10 Downing Street running monkey business. He sent an orderly to the door and says, tell him to come back after I sing monkey business and we'll discuss business. One night at the embassy, Winston Churchill's daughter Mary was my dinner partner. And when the butler passed around the cigars, he said, "Take one for me." I said, "What? What do you want a cigar for? You don't smoke cigars, do you?" She says, "No, my father does, Winston. And we play a little game." I said, "What kind of a game?" I take a cigar, and he takes a cigar, and then he bets me £1, I think was around $2.50. And we bet who can hold the ash on the cigar the longest. At this time, he was running the British government. No, you never think of a man like that. Trying to win $2 from his daughter. Speaking of vaudeville, there used to be a critic in Chicago when we played there by the name of Percy Hammond. This is about 30 years ago, I guess. He was on the Chicago Tribune. And he reviewed our act. We did a big act, and we had about 25 people in the act. And he reviewed the act. And the next morning, this was the review. He said, "The Marx brothers and their various relatives ran around the stage for almost an hour yesterday afternoon. Why, I'll never understand." He was a tough guy. During the Second World War, years later, the Chicago Tribune correspondent had died. They had to get a new guy to go over and cover the war. And they had a big meeting one day. They had Ring Lardner there, and they had the whole staff of the Chicago Tribune. And somebody suggested sending Percy Hammond over, this critic who had reviewed our act. And Ring Lardner says, no, you can't do that. Suppose he doesn't like the war. How many of you have read the George Kaufman book? Nobody, huh? He was a close friend of mine. He was a hell of a playwright. And he was also a show doctor. And I remember one of the Bloomingdale department store family was producing a show and opening it in Philadelphia. And they invited George Kaufman to come down there and see the show because it needed a little help. And Kaufman went down and sat in the second or third row. And when the show was over, the fellow from the Bloomingdales, he came down the audience and he said to George, he said, "How about the show? How'd you like it?" And Kaufman said, "I'll tell you what you do. Close the show and keep the store open at nights." I was playing the Palace Theater once, and Sarah Bernhardt was on the bill. She was one of the first great stars to play the Palace. She insisted on getting $1,000 in cash before she appeared. She was old at this time, but they wanted her at the Palace just the same. She used to do some scene where she used to lie in a coffin and play a dramatic scene. Oh, she was alive. She only had one leg. Did you know that? She was getting $1,000 before each performance. I had two legs and I was getting $50 a week. Once we were on the bill with Fanny Brice. I'm sure a lot of you remember Fanny Brice. She was quite a performer. And on the bill, too, there was an act called Swayne's Rats and Cats. Now, you wouldn't believe that, but that was the name of the act. And they had a miniature racetrack on the stage. And the rats were dressed as jockeys. And the cats were horses. It was an incredible act, imagine it. Teaching these cats and rats to learn all this. And they wore the uniforms too. And one day, while they were doing the act, there was a scream came from Fanny's dressing room. And Swayne ran in there. And he had a Turkish towel with him. He didn't know what he was going to do. Fanny Brice is standing on the chair, frightened to death, got her clothes away up. Swayne grabs this rat. It wasn't one of the rats from his act. This was a sewer rat that had got into the theater. Well, Swayne captured this sewer rat. And the next year, we played on a bill with Swayne again, and this rat was now the star of the show. When we did Animal Crackers, we needed 2 minutes for a change, a scenery change. So I wrote a ridiculous poem. And I always think of whether the audience is really listening to the actor on the stage. I wrote the most ridiculous poem you could possibly write and tried it on the audience. And the first 10 weeks that we did the show, we used to get a sophisticated New York audience. And they used to laugh and they used to applaud at the end. And then you start getting the out-of-towners, people from the Middle West. And they thought I was serious. And this is the way it goes. Did you ever sit and ponder as you walk along the Strand that life's a bitter battle at the best? And if you only knew it and would lend a helping hand, then every man could meet the final test. The world is but a stage, my friend, and life is but a game. And how you play is all that matters in the end. For whether a man is right or wrong, a woman gets the blame. And your mother is your dog's best friend. Then up came Heine Casey and strode up to the bat. And Sheridan was 50 miles away. For it takes a heap of loving to make a home like that, on the road to where the flying fishes play. Then I used to take a chair, which the vaudeville actors used to do in those days, and I would start walking off the stage. And the last line would be, so be a real live Polyarch and laugh, clown, laugh.